Hi, Caleb with Brownells here. Today we're going to be going over the basics of shot shells. So we're not going to get super detailed about everything on the shot shell, but if you're a new firearm owner, this will help give you a better understanding of what you're dealing with when it comes to shot shells. So starting off with the 10 gauge, you start there and then you go all the way down to the 410 gauge. 410 is technically a measurement in caliber, but we'll get into that at a later time. So what does that mean? So the gauge itself is the diameter in basic terms. So look at this 10 gauge here and look at the 410 gauge here, and you'll notice the 10 gauge is a lot larger in diameter. So what that means is it's going to hold a lot more shot and it's going to have a heavier powder charge. So in turn you're going to have higher velocity, but you're also going to have more felt recoil, so that's something to consider on that. So when it comes to all the different gauges, that's one of the main things you need to consider when selecting what gauge shotgun you're going to get. So with all these different gauges here, the two most common and the two you're going to see the most of is going to be the 12 gauge and the 20 gauge. Both of these are extremely versatile, and depending on what shells you're using, you can do everything from hunting rabbits up to taking dangerous game, depending on what type of shot you're using, what length shell you're using. So another important thing to consider is going to be the shell length as well. So for example, these two here are both 12 gauges, but if you'll notice, one's longer. So the standard length for it is going to be the 2 3/4 inch, and then you have this one here, which is a 3 inch. The important thing to remember about this as well is that if you were to measure this right now as is, it would not measure 2 3/4 inches. It would be shorter, because that length is measured whenever this crimp in the front here is open. So that's the actual measurement of the chamber in the shotgun itself. So they're always going to be shorter before they're fired, and then once fired they're going to open up to the actual length, which is 2 3/4 inch. And another important thing to remember there is if you have a shotgun with a 3.5 inch chamber, especially if it's a pump action, you can shoot 3.5 inch, 3 inch, and 2 3/4 inch. You can go backwards, but you can't go the other way around. Some semi-autos are a bit finicky on that, so make sure you check your owner's manual and be sure to shoot the ammo that is recommended. So another important thing to consider is the brass length. So what does that mean? If you'll notice on the bottom of all these shot shells, there's a brass portion. Now, the higher the brass, the heavier the powder charge that's in that shell. Lower the brass, the lighter the powder charge. So what that translates to is shot velocity and felt recoil. So that's another thing to consider. Moving on from there, we have the different types of shot. So if you're standing in front of the ammo shelf trying to pick out ammo for your new shotgun, you'll notice that there's a wide variety of stuff to choose from. We won't get into too much detail, but here's what you need to know. Whenever you get into the numbers such as 7.5, 9, number 5, you'll see all that listed as shot. That shot comes in different weights and different things like that, but the important thing to remember is that the higher the number, the smaller the BBs. The lower the number, the larger the BBs. And then when you get into your buckshots, you'll hear double-aught buckshot. You hear that quite a bit. And then you have your 4-aught buckshot. Well, you also have single-aught through 4-aught buckshot. Those are all somewhat common. So when you get into that, the single-aught is going to have the largest BBs. Or the largest pellets, I should say, and the 4-aught is going to have the smallest. And then you start getting into your other shot sizes here. So buckshots, large. Your other numerical shots are going to be smaller, but still quite effective. Each one has its own purpose, whether it be home defense, hunting, sporting clays, different things like that. Moving on to slugs. So now the slugs themselves are going to be diameter specific to the gauge. So as you can see here, the 12 gauge is a larger diameter slug than the 20 gauge. So that's something that's very important to consider whenever you're selecting what you're basically going to be using your firearm for. So this was the basic Shot Shell 101 video. We've gone into a little bit more detail in other areas in past videos, and we're going to do so again in future videos. So if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call on the tech line. We'll be happy to help you out. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.